All right, excited after a long stretch to be back home this week, and feel like we handled the last couple opportunities on the road in different ways, but handled them well. And I know, in particular, the Northern Colorado game, I thought defensively came out right from that first play when Jace was able to tackle Carver Cheeks and really set the tone offensively, be able to follow it up with a pretty quick score. Went through a little bit of struggle, just the field position game. First end of the first quarter and the second quarter didn't get some third downs, but defensively, kept getting the ball back for the offense, and it was obviously critical to get the 7 before the half, and then 2 plays into the second half, be able to answer with Taco's long touchdown, and really that game went from 13-0 to 27-0, almost in a blink, and I thought we finished the game really well from that point on. Offensively, being able to score a couple times. Obviously, we scored on defense, and they scored at the end. But I thought defensively, we really kept the pressure on and the effort up all game. So, really pleased with that performance. I still would say that Northern Colorado is a good football team. We played well, and we did what we needed to do. But they're a good football team, and those opportunities on the road. Test you, and I think we certainly passed the test. Moving forward, coming back home, playing Weber State, a team that within about 20 games in 21, 22, and 23, we played them 4 times, and now in the last 30-plus games, we haven't played them, and I think they're a team that's really had some misfortune with injuries this year. In particular, they've run through quarterbacks, they've run through running backs as of late, but they still have a bunch of ability on that side of the ball. Good offensive line, good tight ends, good skilled receivers, and I think Jennings, has played well at times. And defensively, they certainly had some breakdowns early in that game on Saturday. Wide open guys running here and there, but they're capable of playing better defense than that, and that's what we got to anticipate. It will be great to be back in front of our home crowd, and I know it's Military Appreciation Day, and we've continued to partner with Big Sky Bravery, so really proud of that organization. What they do for the military community and the fact that they're here in our community. So being able to recognize them, represent them on Military Appreciation Day is much more than just a theme game. It certainly means a lot to that organization, and they mean a lot to not only the Bozeman Gallatin Valley community, but our country and our military. The impact that they've had over the past decade has been tremendous. So that being said, I know we're looking forward to another step on the health front. We did get a little banged up out of that game. I'm not going to rule anybody out as of today. I know you guys would have seen Taki out there dressed and ready to go, so I think that was a good step for him. We didn't need him in that game, but it's my hope that beyond needing him, he'll be in position to play and play meaningful downs this coming Saturday. Otherwise, like I said, the guys that maybe didn't finish that game are still. I think the up in the air in particular. Talk about Brott and Eckert; those two probably will rise to the top of that list. So excited for it. Excited to be again back home in front of our great fans. Looking forward to a Saturday afternoon football.
There was a lot of chaos in the FCS on Saturday. Just your overall thoughts and how this team is kind of just getting on their mindset.
Yeah, that's all we can concern ourselves with. We control enough in front of us that we don't necessarily need this or that to happen outside of our opportunities, and all we can be concerned about is the one right in front of us. And that's what I do appreciate about this team. I think we've been way more concerned with the opportunity than the opponent, and we've been able to continue, I think, to improve through October. And now we're in November, and that improvement's going to still need to happen. And this is a pivotal time for most college football programs. And there's teams getting better, and there's teams that are, on the other side of it, waiting for it to be over. And we're obviously hungry for more, and that I think was apparent with how we played on November 1st, but where do we go moving forward? So I know excited about this opportunity in front of us, and we need to keep getting better.
Defensively, it seems like everybody, especially corners, really take pride in hitting hard and playing with an edge. See a good amount of trash talk. Do you feel like this team maybe stands out quite a bit in that department?
Oh, I don't know. And I think we're a team that really enjoys playing the game of football and celebrates with one another. I don't know that we're a bunch of trash talkers, but we enjoy the game. We play really hard, and I think that's been I hope a hallmark of what we've been able to do. But we're playing right now statistically at a little different clip than we have, and is that just this continued build within our program? I suppose, and it's I think we've continued to recruit speed, and speed shows up in explosive ways, and I think that's probably I hope what you recognize as much as anything, hitting hard is a product of being fast and be getting on fast, getting on things fast, and I think our guys are very coachable too, so their ability to not only to run fast and hit hard, but they will really be able to diagnose things fast, I think is something that I think we've continued to get better and better at. So, yeah, I think to me it looks like a good group of guys that are just enjoying playing the game, playing for one another, with one another, and has an edge for sure. And that's exciting to see as a coach.
Then offensively in that game, a few trick plays you ran, the Wildcat kind of interesting formation. I guess could you just talk about those three in particular?
Well, I think as we go on, plays that have probably been on the call sheet for the better part of the year, they find their way out there. I know that, and we have, when you're 8 games in now, 9, what you've been able to put on film is significant, and you got to be able to then try to do everything you can to play off of that. And on the flip side, what you're seeing out of defense is now, 9 games in, is some patterns, and you hope to be able to take advantage of some things you see on film. So I know, they weren't all like crazy successful necessarily, but I think the more we can continue to put on film, the more we can test defenses, not only the defense we're playing, but then what that means for the defenses moving forward is all part of the thought process.
Coach, you mentioned this team is always looking to improve. What does improvement look like for this team?
Well, I think it's another consistent effort with how we play, how we approach it, how we prepare. I think it's to get a read on this team through the course of the week. I think you can do that. What does that build and practice look like? I think that's as important as anything. From Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday, do you see out there on that practice field a kind of a steady improvement there? And it doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect by any means, but maybe some of the errors or whatever on Tuesday are corrected by the time we get to Thursday, and then we feel like we break that Thursday practice and we can go really out and play fast and confident. So I don't know if there's a particular score or stats or anything like that we're after. I think it's just you walk off the field, and regardless of what the scoreboard says, do you feel like, all right, that was a step forward, and it might mean that like Saturday there is a little bit of struggle in there. How do you respond to that struggle? I think that's what this team, continuing to display its resiliency is something we're continuing to go after. So, the games are going to continue to be meaningful. That's certainly our hope, and we can't get caught up in that. We just got to get caught up in what does our preparation look like? Then what does our execution look like? So there's no magic answer, but I think when you walk off the field on a Saturday, you generally know whether that was a step forward or not.
We've talked a lot about complementary offense just the past few years, and to see Adam and Julius trade 170-yard games, and then to have Justin 300 or 30 yards through the air. Just how is this offense coming together? Just how dynamic is it becoming?
Yeah, I think just our yardage component, being 220 both on both the rushing and the passing side, not having to lean so heavily to running the football. We're certainly capable of running the football when we need to, and that still is our foundation. But being able to throw it and throw it at a higher clip has been important. Having two backs that are both very capable, both very explosive, both capable of being three down backs, both unselfish at the same time. There's real strength in that, and that's not to say then 3 and 4 can't go in there and really get it done too. So we need that to continue to drive us. I think our receiving core has continued to develop. That was maybe the first game we, let's say we unlocked Ryan King a little bit. I know Ryan's been behind the defense a few times over the course of the season, but we haven't maybe connected or seen him or whatever. So to get beyond the defense a couple times and have him show up big was that was a huge step for him in our offense. I think our tight ends don't need to be involved, but can be involved. So a lot of different places it can go. We've continued to get better in the offensive line, and that group continuing to work together. So, I think we are. How much better are we now in November than we were at the beginning of September? I feel like it's significant, but I feel like there's still, there's still ways to go for us too, and that's exciting.
You mentioned Ryan King, just 3 different stops. He's battled injury. Just kind of how resilient is he, and what kind of team is he?
Yeah, talented. That's why we went after him. We knew his story. We knew he, it didn't quite work at the previous 2 stops. I think last year, he, as the season went along, felt like, boy, there's a guy that's kind of figuring out what his role looks like here and really contributed, especially in the second half of the season, in a lot of different ways. And this year, being year 2, but coming off-season surgery, it was a little bit of a slow go because he wasn't part of spring ball, and even in the summer and in the fall camp, he was still slowed up. So, now that we've, I think the last 3-4 games I think seen more opportunities for him to make an impact with the ball in his hands, and hopefully that can continue to grow. I suppose that's why we ultimately brought him here, but it's been much more than that, and that's where you speak to, what kind of teammate he is. I think he enjoys playing the game. I think he enjoys playing the game of football here at Montana State. I think it's become about a different set of things than maybe he had set out to find. I'm sure he was looking at a place where he could play, get more touches, all that stuff. But it's much more than that. I think he's fit in well with our culture, and if he can make a few plays along the way, that's great. But he's been a guy we've been very pleased with how he's growing while he's been here.
It seems like any one of these wide receivers can step up and be the guy any given Saturday. Just your thoughts on the receiving corps' growth and how much confidence they're playing with right now.
Yeah, I think it's been a steady climb for this group. I think Taco had all the opportunities and the touches way back at Oregon, and he's continued to get his opportunities, but so have Dane and Jabez when we talk about the kind of the middle of the field opportunities. It's been good to see Chris get a few more chances the last couple of weeks, and obviously we already talked about Ryan, and that's not to say there's some guys even on the outside of that group. I know we threw one ball up to Jordan. It's been good to get him back healthy. I do think he can be a weapon, or we think he can be a weapon down inside, close in particular. So yeah, they've taken coaching. I think they've played real hard. They've blocked well. Again, a group that there's only one ball, so where it's going to go through the course of a game, hard to control. Keep playing hard and hope it comes your way. And when it does, I need to make a play. I think that's the mindset they're carrying forward. And we will need all those guys in that room to keep doing the things they're doing.
In terms of Weber's offense, how would you describe their capabilities? Like you mentioned, they've dealt with injury and stuff.
Yeah, it certainly has changed quite a bit. Their starter plays for the first several games, their backup went down initially. They're on to their 3rd string. Now he's played a bunch of games. That in itself is very challenging. I know they went to their 4th string guy tail end of the game on Saturday. And having an unstable quarterback situation is challenging. It's really hard. But I will say, I think Jennings has done some really good things in his time playing. I know the running back room now has been decimated, and the guys they've lost are really good players, and that changes. How you think we're gonna, as an offensive coach, how are we gonna move the ball? They had a couple guys that could make you get in space, could make you miss, and it's not that they still don't, but I think they had some special guys, young players that were doing that. So it's had to been weighing on them week after week to say, okay, how are we gonna get it done? Coach Mendel's a really good offensive coach, and he's been very it's been a tough hand this year. He's been dealt a tough hand, so to speak. And I still know, up front they're good. Tight ends are good, so they are still capable of running their offense. But when you lose weapons like they have, it becomes more challenging. So we got to expect their best, and we got to expect that they can be a explosive, dynamic outfit, and we got to play really disciplined because they really do force you to be a disciplined defense against them.
And then I guess defensively, you see on that side, I mean, just full coverage last year.
Yeah, I don't know. I think why does that happen all of a sudden? I can't speak to that, but it happened. So typically those things don't happen like that in consecutive games. I think you have a bunch of blown coverages. You usually get that fixed, and they're good coaches over there. So we gotta count on that part and not count on them just cutting guys loose. They've been able to defend the run at times. Their willingness to play man coverage is certainly there. To pressure is there. So what will the last 3-4 games of ours look like to them so that they can pick what they're going to do against us? I think that's the big question you face offensively for us is, okay, they've had moments where they've really played good defense, and they've had moments where they haven't. We've done this against this defense. We've had moments where we've struggled. So, being able to fit that together at this time of year, that's on a staff being able to project those things, but then keep our game plan as concise as possible so we can go and play fast. And I thought our adjustments in the game, in particular up front, and I thought we handled things on Saturday, were really solid. And we got to be able to build off of that. We allowed a little bit more penetration in that game on Saturday from the interior side of things, and we had maybe in the previous, I'd say 3-4 games. So how do we eliminate that? But then what is Weber State going to do to think they can get in the backfield a little bit?
Primarily 4-3 for them up front.
Yeah, 4-2-5 base, I would say, and very similar to what they've been. I think they've continued on with a similar system, through my whole time here.
And then they've had a decent amount of picks and a couple pick sixes. Anything specifically with what they do coverage wise that maybe is
I think they got talented kids out there for sure. Can play tight coverage, can play the ball in the air. Force maybe an undisciplined throw and be able to make a play. But they're athletic. They've always, that's been a strength of theirs as we played them the previous 4 times is, a talented secondary and guys that can be very disruptive.
Coulter, it's your turn.
Coach, can you hear me okay?
Gotcha.
You mentioned the offensive line looked pretty good for Weber State. What do you think just about that battle that issue?
Yeah, they're a little younger, a little lighter than they've been. They've always had, in my mind, one of the bigger O-lines, one of the older O-lines in the league, and now we haven't played them in a while. Pretty athletic group. I know for us, that's certainly where it has started for us defensively, is with our ability to play very disciplined, very disruptive, defensive up front with the defensive line. So, that needs to continue to happen. Our linebackers need to continue to see the right things and be as aggressive as possible. But if their feeling is, hey, I know we've had these injuries in the backfield, but hey, this has still got to be where it starts for us. I would think that's where their mindset is. Running the football has been a piece to their plan all the way through. Quarterback run game, including that to some degree too. So, it'll be a challenge, I think, for our guys up front. And, I've appreciated how they've gone about their business all year. So I would expect nothing less on Saturday.
You mentioned how much you guys played them at first, and now
Well, I think defensively, certainly a similar system. I know they're a younger outfit just in general, and I know they've kind of gone that way. They've gone the transfer route, and that mix. They've lost guys. So I think just I would say size wise, they're not what they maybe were those first couple years. Um, but again, highlighting the athleticism in the secondary, they certainly had these experienced guys back there, and maybe that's a piece that's lacking right now. I know on the offensive side, I don't think their offensive line is as big as they've been, but they're certainly athletic. I know, Coach Mennel was part of the 22 games. He was the offensive coordinator that year. So what they're doing offensively and stressing the width of the field and in the RPO game, it's a lot of the same elements. They had really good skill players. I know that's got cut into a little bit now, just with the injury piece, and anytime you run through the quarterbacks like they have, that's challenging. But there's the team we would have played in 21 and 22, and its schemes I think are very similar.
Last one for me. We talked a lot about corners and a lot of your other defense, but I want to ask about the free safety spot. I know you've been sort of platooning a group there, and it seems like you don't get a lot of chances, but it seems like they've been playing pretty solid since you started out those guys.
Yeah, yeah. Bryant, Meredith, and J.J. Dolan really got pressed into action, pretty immediately with Taki going down that first half of the Oregon game. And all that being said, they've been also rotating a little bit at the nickel position to get Tatum Gray off the field. So, those two have been key elements to our success on defense. And they're different players. I would say I think what they do know is their strengths, and they've played to that. I think they've been where they're supposed to be as far as not letting things get behind them. That's obviously critical for our free safety in our defense. They've been able to open field tackle, which that is a key ask for that position. We don't ask that position to play a whole bunch of man-to-man, but then those two both flip down and play nickel a little bit, which that position does. So, yeah, I can't say enough about what they've been able to do to just stabilize what was at the time seemed like a pretty big blow with Taki going down. So, with Taki returning now, those two will keep playing, and whether we dedicate one to be the backup or dual free safety, and the same thing goes at nickel, I think, it'll just be, are we playing, we're going to play four guys there versus the three we've been playing at those two spots, and we're not asking maybe, both those guys to each week, be comfortable playing two. So, Brian is a transfer. I think he's just continued to, growing his knowledge of what we're doing. And then JJ, JJ flashed on special teams last year, but wasn't really a key piece on defense whatsoever. So, his growth in the last calendar year, can't say enough about it. And, between him and Coulter Petrie, who's backing up at strong safety, where they've come since this time last year. They got a little bit of run as a backup potential guy through this stretch last year when I think Taki was even down last year as a backup and someone else was. So they were up with the mindset that they could go in a game, and it didn't really happen that way. But I think ever since then, they've both worked really hard to take their games to another level. And, I certainly have to give Coach Shepard, Brian Shepard, a bunch of credit too, and just getting that group ready to play. They go out there very schooled up, and there's a high standard to live up to at that position.
Just one more for me. Just Ty Okada getting the start last night in his first NFL interception. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Ty continues to take advantage of what's been in front of him. It was cool seeing him, on Sunday Night Football, be able to say Ty Okada, Montana State. Not so sure about his mustache, but I get it. It's Movember. I did get a chance. I had it on. I wasn't really, watching it, but it was on the background, and obviously, you hear his name, and then you see that interception. Ty's an exceptional athlete. He is, and he's, in my time, as prepared and, going to be a guy that's going to max out everything that he has in front of him. So to see him, make that jump and just gain enough traction to be on the team was a huge jump for him. Now to, get this opportunity to start and play regularly, and it's going to be hard for them, I would imagine, when they're a little healthier to get him off the field. I think he's it appears to me that he's playing that well, and yeah, very proud that he represents us out there, because he's one of those guys that he bet on himself, believed in himself, worked his tail off. I think really embraces the fact that he came through Bozeman, and Montana State means a lot to him. So yeah, he means a lot to us too.
Just wanted to ask one thing about JT Reed and what your thoughts are, his evolution both this season and throughout his time here.
Well, a ton of perseverance. There's been a few times certainly that he could have gone the other direction, and whether it's hung it up or whatever. I think he's dealt with some injuries that a lot of people wouldn't work through, and he's continued to figure out his own body to stay as healthy and durable as possible. And then this year, you think about being a team captain, what that means. In this calendar year, he graduated from college, which was a big deal for him. And then all of a sudden he's going to play guard, and then Burke gets hurt and he gets flipped to center, and he really has taken that and ran with it. So and this opportunity for him this season means so much to him. He he's not cutting any corners for sure. He hasn't all the way through. And again, there's been times when a lesser man would have folded, and he just kept pushing through. And I'm glad we have him. I'm glad, honestly, the way it worked out was an idea, but I think it probably worked out the way it was supposed to, with him now playing center for us and Burke being able to go back to guard, and that group in large part because of JT and the example, and just how much it means to him. And I think that's why they continue to take a step forward, because they haven't reached their potential. And I think you got to have guys internally that drive that, and he and Titan in particular are doing that.